The concept for Epartrade is basically, in my opinion, there's a big hole in the internet. So the internet started many years ago, but there's never been an online business community for racers on the World Wide Web. The need for Epartrade is actually quite obvious. Basically, people in the business of auto racing need a place online to hang out and to get their problems solved.
It's extremely simple for a buyer or for a supplier to interact on the platform. The first thing you need to do is sign in, which is free. And the second thing is, when you see a product that you're interested in, all you need to do is click on request more information. If it's a company, you click on request more information, and then from there, it is forwarded directly to the buyer or to the supplier.
You can go to epartrade.com, you become part of a community of businesses in racing, and it makes sourcing products much easier than just on the internet or using Google.
At Epartrade, there is no e-commerce. It's literally a connection just like at a trade show. So now, any time of the year, a buyer could reach out to a supplier through an email.
More than that, it's a place to go just to keep current every day. So it's a good place to start your workday in your racing business or in your offices of your professional race team. And you know you're current when it comes to new technology, industry news, technical papers, technical videos, all of that and more. We're not looking for a million hits per day. All we want is people who are really the volume buyers of racing products in the racing industry to be part of the little world of Epartrade. We have racing businesses participating from around the world. So you get suppliers from around the world, you get buyers from around the world.
Epartrade really eliminates having to travel, closing down your shop. Now you have a place to showcase globally your racing product and technology.
Thank you very much for being with us this morning.
Hey, Francisque, I want to mention about USAC. You know, I remember when they came into the office at PRI 15 years ago, and it has been a joy. I bumped into Kevin about 2 years ago at a race back in Indy, and to hear all that is going on at USAC. We had them on Race Industry Week last year. I didn't feel like Kevin had enough time to explain everything that he's involved in. Really has grown USAC.
I remember that day, Judy. I absolutely do. You know, Kevin was with Mopar at that time, and Steve was a big fan of Kevin, and he came to our office and said, we're going to be running USAC, and we were all surprised. And what a brilliant job he has done in 15 years. He basically transformed that organization, and so we're delighted to have you guys with us, and the one and only Mr. Kevin. How are you today?
Is. Hello, Kevin.
Hi guys. Sorry, I was a little confused on which link, and I messed up a little bit. Sorry about that.
You're fine.
Okay, we're all here.
Very good.
Get it off to Mr. Hammond.
Jeff, you're ready for another
I'm ready.
hour? Excellent.
I'm ready for another hour. I took a deep breath and we're ready to get her done. Good morning, everyone.
Jeff.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hi, good morning, Laura. Hey, Preston, you got to take your mute off there, partner.
Oh yeah, I'm unmuted, just that way there's no background noise for you.
Okay. I'll welcome each and every one of you. I mean, it's an honor and a privilege to get a chance to have such a great group that has been involved in really making a lot of things great for many, many years. And who wants to lead off here and kind of bring us up to speed of what's going on with USAC?
I'll take that, Jeff. So, USAC's been around since 1956. We've kind of run the gamut on sanctioning different types of series. We had the largest road racing program in 1958 to 1962. We've, of course, sanctioned IndyCar racing from 1956 to the late 90s. And we've kind of become known as sprint cars and midgets in the dirt. But what's interesting, we've been really through a revolution of our business over the last 5 or 6 years. We've expanded into new segments of motorsports, including rally racing, which Preston now is leading the American Rally Association, which we own and operate. Todd is operating international snowmobile racing, another division of USAC that Todd is running. We also launched and kicked off the Porsche Sprint Challenge, which is a road racing program under the Porsche platform. We kicked that off here in 2021. So beyond owning those series, we also sanction multiple series, including Robbie Gordon and the Stadium Trucks, the SR Road Challenge, Ultra 4 King of the Hammers, the Red Bull Scramble Series, Core and Gas Short Course Truck Series. So we're a very diverse sanctioning body. In fact, for 2022, 2 new properties that USAC will sanction will be the Road to Indy program and the NRX Rallycross program. So our view of a sanctioning body has really broadened in the last 5 or 6 years. And Laura, as part of that glue that holds us together with her insurance background in motorsports, she's our risk manager. And the glue to a sanctioning body is insurance, because you have a lot of risk in motorsports, and we are insuring probably several hundred events a year and 20 to 30,000 participants.
It sounds to me like it's almost overwhelming, Todd. I mean, it's the idea. I thought that when I think about USAC, I was always kind of like in the belief that you guys were like the gold standard when it comes to a sanctioning body, you know, for a governing group of people who care about all forms of motorsport. And you started that way and you continue. It sounds like now the blanket is not just, I'm just going to use a loose term, you're not just working with 10 or 12 organizations, it's expanding each and every year. And where does it stop? I mean, really, where does it stop? Where is, do you guys see yourselves continue to embrace other sanctioning? I mean, I was blown away when I read about the idea of snowmobiles and USAC, for example.
Yeah, it is interesting. So, once we kind of came to a realization that what we do at a core can be expanded to other groups, and it's working. And so we're kind of doubling down on that in 2022. We're going to start a digital transformation of USAC. We've really stepped up the back end and how we service other people. For example, with SRO or even Road to Indy, we're working with them on their back end of how people enter events, how they license for the competition, because those processes are very important for risk protection, of signing waivers, making sure you're doing everything properly, having accurate records. So those foundational principles of what you do for one series normally applies to multiple series. And so what we're at doing right now at USAC is looking at everything we do, making sure it's fit for today from a legal aspect, from a risk management aspect, and then digitizing it and making it user-friendly to fit masses of people. And we've done that, but we feel like we want to stay ahead of the curve and make sure that everything we do, maybe we're computer-friendly now, we want to be mobile-friendly tomorrow. So everything we're doing is constantly being evaluated. How can we better ourselves to service the needs of rally racers under Preston or snowmobile racers under Todd? So from a sanctioning perspective, we are trying to become better service providers. That may include timing scoring services. It may include race directors. It may include safety personnel of series that may need additional resources and help. For example, timing and scoring, it seems like every weekend we're looking for timing and scoring people. And timing and scoring itself is fast changing. In many race series now, where you wouldn't talk about this 3 years ago, but I can see quickly evolving to GPS-based timing scoring. For rally systems, we're already pretty much there. It's hard to put a loop into a track at many dirt tracks. If you go to a good road course, they may have 5 loops in a track. Well, with GPS, you can go to virtual loops. You could have infinite loops. And that data that you collect back is very valuable and what it could provide other racers long-term. So those services that we're bundling right now, working on and trying to be more efficient, we can then offer to more people.
Kevin, along that same line of the services you provide, and you mentioned Laura, how she helps to keep the legal part of it, whatever, however you put it together. Does this also include, and I'm sure this is the elephant in the room, the COVID process? I mean, does USAC have a COVID process a lot like what NASCAR does? And if people come to you, do y'all have that in place where it's easy for somebody to implement it or put it in play, under your banner?
Yeah. We actually did create, and we were quick to the market with this last May. We created a three-phase plan for the state of Indiana, went to the governor's office with it, actually was approved, and we were back racing in Indiana June 14th of 2020 during COVID with that three-step phase plan. So we took that plan, modified it for all of the sanctioning partners, including, again, rally and snowmobile racing, with COVID waivers that we put in place. And that ran its course throughout 2020 and a little bit in 2021. Preston, I believe in rally, you guys still use some of that at times, but we have put that in place, and it's pretty much starting to phase out at this point.
So Laura, you got anything you can add to that as far as, your involvement with keeping USAC and all the different organizations that are under that banner? Because as we all know, racing is dangerous. A lot of these motorsports and types of things are very dangerous, and being able to protect those, I'm gonna call it different divisions or series with the USAC banner being attached to it. How do you go about doing that?
Well, I think first and foremost, the management at USAC is very different. And let's face it, safety, insurance, risk management is all a very boring piece of the racing industry. But who I report to, whether it's Preston on ARA or, Kevin overall, they're very supportive of doing what's best. It's our job, because so many people are coming to USAC, and whether it's a race team or a series, it's our job to give them trust and peace of mind. And I think that if you had leadership that was not behind the safety and the risk management portion, it would be a lot more difficult. It's very easy with USAC.
Well, like I say, I appreciate you being on, because I think there's a lot of people maybe have tuned in to get more information as how they need to they may be looking to even want to join USAC. And I think, the ability that Kevin and yourself and Preston will be able to, share with over the remainder of this hour may influence them to want to maybe, reach out to y'all, because I think that's the one thing in my experiences with local tracks or local series is that big insurance question. I mean, it's just the liabilities of even starting something sometimes are one of the biggest concerns. And Kevin and Laura, are you the folks that want to hear from these organizations that are you willing once again to expand and embrace them?
Yeah, and that's what we're setting our business up to do. And unfortunately, motorsports insurance is at a crossroads where increased risk, increased tort laws, liability in the United States have really pressured motorsports insurance. Additionally, a lot of the participant accident insurance in motorsports has always been an excess policy. You're paying $50 for a license and it's excess to your primary. There's been a big shift in the last few years of primary insurance companies declining coverage for motorsports accidents. So Laura, do you want to expand on some of that?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult. Racers want to focus on what's fun and the insurance side of it, or what's going to happen to me after the accident is it's not something that they really want to focus on. But Participant accident is something that Kevin has always pushed and wanted to protect the folks that are racing with USAC. I do not blame the series for joining where there is such a powerful master program going on. We have seen a lot more of the health insurance on the individual pushing back because it's a race incident. So the levels of participant accident coverage have to be high enough to really help the families out. I am not a health insurance expert. I really need to figure out why this is all going on, because years ago we used to just be excess, the deductible, the out of pocket, but there are carriers right now that are making it more difficult on the racer. So that's one of the things I really hoped that we could work through with some of our series and drivers is, let's look at your policies and see what's going on. Let's see what, before the accident happens, let's see what position you would be in, because the racing sanction only provides X amount. So let's know that going in versus finding it out after the accident. And
as I said earlier, we have a lot of people right now on with us. And again, if you have a question for any of these folks, please don't hesitate to ask that question, because now is the time to get the answers. And that's what they're here for. I mean, I really appreciate y'all coming on and spending some time with us and getting us updated about where USAC is and what direction they're going into. And Kevin, if you want to continue to kind of focus on, anything that you want to make sure we get out there today, please do. I mean, I got a few questions more I'm going to ask myself, but I'd rather you kind of lead this thing and
Sure.
tell us what's happening next.
Well, I'll kind of let Todd speak here a little bit. Todd was the president of International Snowmobile Racing and the owner, quite frankly, of ISR, which is about 140 different races a year, 40 different organizations that race. It's kind of a master sanctioning body. And we actually started working with Todd, I believe around 2016, and we ended up acquiring, I believe 2018, we acquired the property, and Todd is hung in there as the president. So Todd, maybe you could explain the evolution of how ISR started seeing a struggle on the insurance side of the business and protecting events, and the relationship and how it came about, and how we kind of revolutionized snowmobile racing from that perspective.
Well, but ISR has been around for 40 years. And before I purchased ISR, I was an affiliate of ISR since about 2001. So I've been in the ISR things for about 20 years now. And when I purchased it, one of the problems that we had is we had increased insurance costs, liability wise, to the events. And it was going up in like 30% increments. So basically, since I deal with the real grassroots, I want to say Alliance Club event and snowmobile racing to the stadium events, it was really hard to try to keep everybody going when the increases were that high. And that's when I reached out to Kevin through a mutual sponsor. I think that was around 2013 when I purchased it there. We couldn't get insurance anymore. And that was a big part of the whole game. And by working with them now, we actually cut the insurance to 50% of what we were doing. And we've had minimal increases now for the last 6 years. So I get together with over 40 affiliates every year. And the first thing out of their mouth is, are we going to be able to afford to do this again? And so when we come up with these ideas and implement them, that's been the great thing for our partnership or now merging with USAC, is the fact that it's basically taken us forward with technology, online waiver systems and licensing programs, and that it's been really good.
Yeah, and it's been a challenge. Snowmobile racing, when you have 4,000 riders and you're racing all of the country, I mean, accidents happen, and they're not infrequent. Things do happen, snowmobile racing, that much like motorcycle racing. So the risk is there, and we've been able to manage it with Todd. Now, I give Todd a lot of credit here, that Todd, through some of his meetings that they do annually with the race directors, there's a lot of rules that ISR, as a master sanctioning body, ISR has many rules that look at safety. For example, you have to have orange colored helmets. Todd, why don't you explain some of the rules? I really like what you did there.
And most of those rules, I tell this in the meetings, you know, they're in the book because it happened. and so we've just implemented them all the way through. And you know, we manage that rule book and we enforce the rule book. And that was one thing I was proud of when I took it over, was there were some gray areas in there. We tried to clean a lot of stuff up. If you can't have a rule if you can't enforce it. But safety wise, a lot of them rules were there, and we've just worked on them and added to them. For instance, you got to have 144 inches of orange on your front and your back, high visibility helmets, chest protectors, because we run studded tracks. So the penetration of the stud through some type of a chest protector has to be thick enough to cover that. Shin pads, elbow pads. But like Laura was saying, you know, the racer wants to race, but he doesn't necessarily think about sliding across the ice in his elbows and his knees. And we had a little bit on the last segment with the fire suits, you know. And so our main thing that we've done really good at was just bringing everybody together and educating them all so that it's the same from New York to Wyoming to Winnipeg to Valcourt. You know, it's all the same set of rules. And it's been even easier for me to maintain now that we can reach out to these race and tech directors and everybody's implementing the same thing. And a lot of the programs that Kevin came up with, working on the backside, we have some USAC red flag, for instance. It's a way that we can communicate if there is an injury or an incident at any event, and it goes directly to the insurance company. Laura sees them, and that has a lot to do with our personal accident claims also, that it's a direct line and you don't have the paperwork stall in between. I think we know some of the grassroots events where are those waivers, or did anybody even sign a waiver? And that is something that we've worked very, very hard on. And that goes back to being able to maintain the insurance at the levels we do for the cost that we do.
Well, and much to Todd's credit on that, he's been amazing to work with, because if I dissect where the accidents are happening, and are they happening within a certain age group, which venue and why, he's very proactive in getting the course to change, or maybe taking some of the younger sledders out of a situation where there was repetitive events. So when I said earlier, it's just a lot easier to manage the risk side when you have leadership that really understands it. Todd, with a few years of just really looking at the losses and how and where they were happening, we were able to mitigate many of them because he just reconstructed.
Yeah, and at the same time, when we talk about insurance, there's two sides of that insurance equation, and that is we've been kind of talking about participant protection, but there's also event protection, meaning protect the event overall. And I'll bring in Preston here because again, another acquisition we made in the last few years was rally racing, and historically, rally racing in the country has had its ups and downs of their risk. And it's very critical when you're running the cars, Travis Tron and Ken Block running on the public access roads, and they're running at speeds that are spectacular, and there are fan areas on that course. The potential for risk of somebody getting injured and then trying to sue that event is fairly large. So we have to mitigate that risk as much as possible. So Preston, why don't you talk about the rally side, because that's really the liability side of the business that we're exposed to.
Yeah, of course. Jeff, thanks for having us on, and Kevin, thanks for that question. Rally is kind of in a unique situation where we're racing on what is usually open public roads. And so maintaining a closed course and of course the liability and risk mitigation with that is a pretty unique challenge compared to other motorsports where it is happening, say in a stadium or within a course itself. So the great thing about working with USAC and certainly Laura and Kevin and the team is their approach to each series is individualized. So a lot of working with Laura is her understanding the sport of rally as a whole and really the unique challenges we have, whether it's bannering, marshals. We have a set of course opening cars that are kind of our first eyes on the road that actually work with our team because they are seeing the course as the race is happening and able to give us information for where there may be extra risks that we need to pay attention to. So really the approach with Laura is leading up to the events and working on safety plans and the information coming from them as far as what they're going to be looking for, not only from the insurance's standpoint for risk and liability, but then also from the participant safety. Because at the end of the day, yes, we need to mitigate the risk, but a lot of these races are friends of mine. So obviously we want to make sure we can keep them safe and keep them racing.
So there's a common message here. Go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to say, Kevin, what I'm hearing here from snowmobile racing to rally racing to all the different things that USAC is, I'm going to say umbrellaed under. How big of a team do you have? How do you delegate who's going where? Because there's 4 of you I'm looking at right now. There's got to be a pretty big size organization here that we're talking about with USAC so that you, Laura, can feel comfortable that, we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's in Spokane, Washington. And Preston is, over here, and Todd is getting ready to go someplace in Colorado to run a snowmobile race from Canada. How do you manage all that? How many people have you got working for USAC?
Well, the core of USAC today is relatively small, probably 25 to less than 30 people. But as we expand, we have great leadership, people like Todd and Snowmobiles and Preston and Rally. We have different clusters of our business. Our Porsche series has Randy Hembry leading that. Jason Smith kind of heads up the off-road segment of our business. Levi Jones, who just departing us now, going to IndyCar, has been leading our circle track portion of our business. Every cluster of our business has a leader, and that leader then has, for the most part, contract staff, people that come in and operate races on a weekend basis, not full time. But the glue behind all of that is the technology that we put in place to keep all that together, to ensure that the foundation is strong. So our success and growth over the last 5-6 years has been building that foundation that others now rely on, and it's attracted more business to us. When we launched the Porsche series, Porsche actually called USAC and said, "Hey, we're going to start a new series. Are you guys interested?" We're like, they should have called the right place. And so, but they actually said, "Hey, look, we know what you do with SRO Road Challenge. We know what you do as far as how you're doing the entry systems, you're doing the license systems, you're doing the protection, you're helping them with the competition side. We like that." And so we worked with Porsche to develop and launch a new series in 2021, which has been pretty successful. And we're now doubling that series to a West Coast regional series next year that will launch at Laguna in April. So it's having the systems in place to allow us to expand and give us that scale that we need to go to Spokane, Washington, have a race and feel good about the protection of that race. As a sanctioning body, we're only as strong as the insurance companies that are grounded and partnered with us, and the waiver processes that we haven't put in place to make sure that we're protected long term. Because in the U.S., the tour industry is pretty open, and there's a lot of challenges. When people get hurt or threatened, they're quick to go to the court system to try and make sure that they feel good about their outcome. We're protecting motorsports in general at the end of the day.
Yeah. With that being said, we're starting to get some questions here, group, and this question kind of touches with Laura, Kevin, and what they're asking is for a smaller grassroots motorsport event organizer with just 2 events a year doing timed off-road time trials with 100 to 130 competitors. What are the minimum maximum insurance parameters that we should be looking at, and how can we best manage our risk to minimize our liabilities? Now, with that being said, I'm sure hopefully we got more organizations that are going to be listening to your response, but is that something you can explain real quickly here, or should they just reach out to you after we get done here? Because again, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm sure that's what the question is.
I think there's a generic answer here that if somebody just called and said, what do I need as a base? It depends on where you're racing. Are you racing on public property, on government property? So the standards of what you're going to need on the general liability side will vary. At a minimum, any property should have $1 million of general liability coverage. Every racetrack that USAC operates at on the sprint car midget side, we require them to have $1 million of their own general liability. On top of that, USAC carries a $4 million excess policy on top of that, just in case something dramatic happened. So at a local level, any event, if you're in motorsports, any event needs to have at least $1 million of coverage on the liability. On the participant side, because they kind of go hand in hand. If a participant gets hurt, the one protection for the event side is to have a participant accident program in place that helps prevent people from suing the event. So if a participant gets hurt, even though they sign waivers saying, hey, I know I'm taking a risk here, I'm running I'm a racer, I get it, I'm taking a risk, I'll sign my waiver, doesn't mean people don't get hurt. And when they do, they forget about that waiver, they forget about anything they signed, and they're looking to get help. And so the first thing we do is we really coach any series we work with is to have that participant help plan, even though it's excess medical and the licenses may be $50 to $100, $200 a year. That puts a buffer, because if somebody gets a small injury, even break an arm, a trip to the hospital, that buffer will protect them from coming back and trying to attack the liability of the event. So we coach a lot of smaller groups. Make sure you have your general liability in place. Make sure you have participant accident insurance in place of $25,000 to $50,000, because that doesn't go very far when you go to the hospital. So Lori, do you want to add to that?
Yeah.
Well, I think that what Preston said earlier is really key as well. Everybody at USAC who's leading any of the series or they're from the race official standpoint, they're all friends. They don't want to see their friends struggle at the time of an incident. So the really great thing about USAC is the participant accident, as Kevin said, is a deterrent for the liability claim to happen, but it's also goodwill coverage. It's also, we don't want to see our members, our participants struggling at the time to meet their deductible, their co-insurance. So that help is, I know that a lot of the series directors that I talk to they feel much better that they can offer that, as the family members really worried as the ambulance is going away, that our series have at different levels have good coverage in place.
Well, and I can speak to that a little bit as well. So within the rally series, we have big national events, upwards of over 100 cars and 200 plus participants, all the way down to small regional races with 10, 15 cars and 20 or 30 participants. And I mentioned earlier kind of the catered approach that the USAC team really takes, and making sure that the coverage makes sense depending on what the event is, and also making sure that it's reasonable, so that yes, the national events tend to have a bit larger budget, and so we can do different things with insurance. But if we took the same approach for even smaller events, then it may price them out of the market, which is not something we want to do.
And I don't know if you're seeing some of these questions were being asked, but Edward has made a comment here about, he assumed the insurance coverage would be like a three-part need. First, medical coverage for drivers. Second, being issue that things happen at the track, and third coverage would be spectator issues. And he's guessing that, which is you guys have touched on, that most domestic insurance carriers, are few and far between that are willing to, come in and cover these types of events. And is there a non-admitted proprietary Lloyd's program that can be put together? And I know each and every day that's probably part of y'all's challenge, is coming up with the next plausible way to make this more affordable, but yet still maintain a good and reasonable coverage for the participants or the spectators in the event of a wreck or a tragedy.
Yeah, and that kind of falls to that general liability standpoint. Laura, why don't you comment on the shifting changes in insurance on that?
So the bottom line is, the question was, is there a Lloyd's program? And there are Lloyd's programs and domestic programs. There are a lot less this year than there were a few years ago. The problem with getting Lloyd's involved, I've been to London several times. They do not like liability in the United States because we are the most litigious country. So it's, you'd have to have a really great relationship and stellar books to show to get that program up and running. A lot of times people worry about claims being handled with anything from Lloyd's, but as long as you have a good intermediary to handle those claims, that's great. But again, it's difficult due to the legal climate here in the US. So right now, that is definitely something that we work on constantly. It's I look for carriers that I've worked with in the past or that are coming out new. There's trade shows in the insurance industry where you can go and talk to carriers about taking the risk on. So hopefully in the next year or two, there will be new markets popping up.
With that being said, the question that kind of pops in my head, Kevin and Todd, and as well as Preston, when you have an event, have somebody that wants to be a part of USAC, is it part of your responsibility or part of the fact that you look at their rules and their needs? Do you have to kind of like sometimes get involved and say, you can't do this, you got to change that? I heard somebody, Todd does that with the snowmobile stuff. If you don't like what you see, is that part of what USAC's responsibility is, to be able to get these people and give them the kind of protection that they're looking for?
Absolutely. I mean, that as a role of a sanctioning body, you're now responsible for that event from a safety aspect. So we do have to look at rules and feel comfortable. We can't just sanction somebody just to do it. There's a wide degree of why we partner with certain people. SRL Road Challenge is a great example. Great team of people, incredibly attentive to what they do before the race, after the race, but during competition, the medical car, the safety crew, all well thought out, well laid out plan. So when they talked about a sanctioning partnership with USAC, there's not a lot USAC needed to come in to change in their direction. They were already very established in what they were doing. Versus, Todd and Preston are dealing with smaller promoters, individual events. They're very similar roles, rally and snowmobile. They're dealing with small events, a guy who may put on one event a year and has a volunteer staff that comes in, and may be 50 volunteers to come in and run a rally for the weekend, and they're new volunteers. So there's a lot of training. There's a complete safety plan that's developed on each event, sent to Laura to review. Laura reviews it, may push back and say, we need to have an ambulance sitting here. We need to have, for example, when at every event we do for ISR, for snowmobiles, there's a long questionnaire filled out. What type of fencing do you have? What kind of spectator barrier do you have? How far away are the spectators from that barrier? And it's a legal document that promoter has to fill out and sign to state that he agrees, he has ambulance on site, all these specific items that are legally binding that he's agreeing to make that an official ISR event. So yes, that's a very, very important question and foundational to what we have to do to make sure we protect everybody involved.
Well, and I'll jump in here. So, as Kevin mentioned, really our series is structured with individual events around the country. And, these events, promoters are really only doing a couple events a year. And so when we come in, we start working with them 6 months in advance, developing that safety plan, looking at the specific course that they're putting together. And so we're having those talks well in advance of the events actually happening. And that's really where the structure of the safety plan comes from. And there's even been talks within our group of, should we have a set template for the safety plan? And generally we fall on no, because each event has enough unique character that you've really got to make sure that you're paying attention to all those little details with each individual event, because they are different. And so that's where that kind of approach comes from, with support from USAC. But, it sounds like Todd and certainly myself really take the lead when you're working with these events, just because there are those little differences between them that from a risk mitigation standpoint really need to be paid attention to, and can create a big enough difference that, if we don't necessarily do our job of looking at different situations, then it can cause problems for participants and event organizers and facilities or whatever it comes down to.
And I think, Preston, sometimes the best laid plans aren't followed, and we've seen incidents like that this year. Fortunately, there was no injuries, but at post event, sometimes in a rally, you see things post event, you look at it and say, well, that's not what we should have been doing as a group. And we have to lay a little harder policies down for the next year that says, look, this is not acceptable. And it could have been a photographer on the course in an area that we didn't deem safe. But those things are what leads to issues later on. We have to look out to be proactive about these things. And sometimes it's not a comfortable conversation with the promoter. And sometimes we have to go to the promoter and say, we won't be back if this isn't followed our way, because we can't put ourselves and our organization at that risk if people are not following the rules specifically. We have another series called Sand Outlaw Drag Racing. It's side-by-side sand rails drag racing in the sand. Relatively safe. The speeds aren't real high because you're going through sand. But at some of those events, if you look at online and they're not USAC sanctioned, you see a lot of people standing around the course with no barriers, and there's so many different varieties of people running motorsports. And what we have to do is take that higher road, that when you do have a USAC sanctioned event, it's going to be held to a different standard than just your buddies out doing the same thing in the outdoors. So that's extremely important. As USAC has evolved to kind of more of an extreme sanctioning body with rally and off-road, things that jump, like some wheels and trucks that jump. Yeah, it's a little bit more dangerous, but we're also doing it in a confined area with safety people in place. And that's where we have to keep a very, very good track record so we can continue those relationships ongoing and be properly protected by everybody.
The question I got for you now, listen to, and are you guys, do you go out of the United States? I mean, do you go to Canada? Do you go to Mexico? Or you have any kind of international involvement, not just here in the United States? Because, I kind of get the feeling that you're predominantly a United States driven organization, but do you go international?
We do. And Todd, I'll let Todd is the organization that mostly goes out of the US. So Todd, why don't you explain ISR?
We do a lot of, being snowmobile in the snow belt, we do a lot of stuff in Winnipeg, little town called Beaujeu. We do some stuff up in Valcourt, which is Bombardier's headquarters there. They put on a large event. So we do get into Canada, and we do the Iron Dog in Alaska. I'll actually be going to that event this year. That follows the Iditarod Trail. And so the main thing is when we go to these events, a lot of times people, I'll show up at an event and they're like, oh, ISR is here. You know, it's like, we're just here to help. We're another set of eyes, you know, and we might tell them to put a barrier over here or maybe do it this way. And by doing that and not necessarily going to your best events, you know, go to some of your smaller events and help them, pretty much your best events got it covered. But even then, some of your best events, sometimes they want to try to change something up, and they're not thinking about it, you know, and say, oh, we want to make it cool, spectacular. And I said, whoa, stop, hold on. What about this? And that's where the training comes in. When you, the more sets of eyes that you can put at a racetrack, the better you are, because they see that kind of stuff, you know. When we also deal with the manufacturers directly in the snowmobile world, I deal with all four race directors. And when we come up with a problem, like junior kids racing a bunch of different kinds of sleds, we'll put stuff together in some test patterns, work with them, work with a way of limiting the sleds. And again, the whole group, as a group, we've grown our youth racing, which has grown our program immensely. So.
Yeah, Todd actually, they actually come up with things from the racetrack from a safety perspective that actually make their way back into production at times with limiting things. So the feedback from ISR directly to the manufacturers evolves production snowmobiles over time.
Well, it sounds like to me that, you know, USAC is continuing to be that watchdog that try to, you know, protect ourselves from ourselves. If I'm assuming correctly what I'm hearing here.
Well, you know, that goes in many different degrees, whether it's pushing the envelope on rules for performance, which is part of the sanctioning body's job, you know, and keeping everybody in check on the rules and technology advances and keeping titanium and carbon fiber and, you know, things of very costly nature in motorsports, keeping them at bay to help keep the fairness and cost level for everybody, or from tire technologies, or people trying to enhance the spec tire that may be in the program. It's part of the sanctioning body's role is to provide. I want to say that in 1956, the charter for USAC says that we're here to ensure safe competition for all. And it is interesting. People have asked me, well, what is the business model? What's the business mission for USAC? Actually, Mark Miles from IndyCar asked me that one day, and I was stunned because I really didn't have an answer. We don't have, you know, we're a 501c6 nonprofit organization. We don't have investors to give back money to. Not that we make a ton of money here, but our mission and our charter is to provide safe automobile racing in the United States. We were founded by Tony Hallman, who was the owner of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And from whatever, 1911, their first race, 1909, their first races over there, to 1955, AAA was the sanctioning body for a lot of motorsports in America. In fact, if you go to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum, all the historical trophies, beautiful trophies, by the way, are all AAA on them. And in 1955, there was a tragedy in Europe, and many fans, spectators were killed in the grandstand from a fiery crash at Formula One. And that essentially shut down AAA overnight. They said overnight in the United States, we are, you know, motoring insurance company, we can't put ourselves at risk in motorsports. So Tony Hallman the next day founded United States Auto Club. Sounds like a AAA. And that was the beginning of USAC, was for the purpose of providing the sanctioning backbone of IndyCar and Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
And I think within, our series, Kevin mentioned earlier, kind of investing in the technology side, and kind of touched on one of the big changes we made this year, which was GPS tracking for each individual competition car. Again, with rally, you're spread out over at times hundreds of miles, kind of across a big footprint. And so, I approached Kevin and the team within USAC and said, I think this will be a big benefit to the series from a competition and from a safety side. And, they've shown with several different instances that, yes, we want to invest in that sort of technology, and yes, part of it's risk mitigation, but also it's really feature additives for the competitors. And so, insurance, of course, is a boring side of it, but that's only one part of the safety that they're bringing to the different series, and certainly ours included, is that investment in growing the sport from that safety standpoint.
Preston, why don't you explain the Rally Safe program, and just from a perspective of what happens on the technology side to help protect people when a car may go off track on a rally that's 8 miles away in the middle of the woods. Explain what happens technology-wise.
Yeah, so again, the footprint of rallies are pretty spread out. We're racing on sections of roads, and so it's not feasible for us to have a person even every mile, at times. And so these cars kind of go off into the woods, and you won't know a car is off the track until potentially that next car that arrives at the scene of the crash. And so what we saw was these gaps in the response times for an emergency situation, whether it's an injury or a fire or anything like that. And so they kind of tasked me with really looking to change that, so that we can, lower the risk, but also keep the competitors safer. And I ended up looking worldwide, and this Rally Safe system was actually developed in Australia, and it's used in the World Rally Championship, so the largest rally series in the world. And we looked at their technology, and what really changed is when you have a crash, it actually has G sensors inside of the units themselves that are installed in every vehicle. And so we're able to get basically information from the cars every 1/10 of a second, from G forces to speeds to, and then they also have the ability to send us direct messages. So, car catches on fire, there may not be a G situation or an impact, but they're actually able to send us a message through that unit, regardless of where they are, that says, hey, we need fire response or medical response, if it's that situation. And so it cut our response times pretty dramatically. Average response time that we saw in rally was about 20 minutes, give or take, to incidents. And we already had several examples this year where our responses were under 10 minutes. And so, from a safety standpoint, that's a pretty dramatic change.
I'd have to echo that. I mean, I had a privilege one time of going and covering a world rally event in Finland, and I was totally amazed the amount of territory that these rally races can cover. And to your point, being able to know exactly where a vehicle is with the driver and co-pilot is huge. And to be able to have that kind of an effect in such a short period of time by bringing in a new system, my hat's off to you, because I can only imagine being inside of a vehicle that's had a crash, and you're waiting and thinking nobody cares and nobody's coming. I think that bodes well about what this USAC is bringing to the table for not only for that series, but for any series that you guys are involved with.
Yeah, the great thing about that system is it notifies race control directly when the car is stopped, when there's a significant G-force, but it also notifies the car behind it who may be approaching, that as they approach the car that may be on course but wrecked, the car coming behind it, which is 1 or 2 minutes behind, it's telling that car, hey, look, there's danger coming up ahead because there's a car down. Mm-hmm. So it's a great tool for rally racing. Highly elevated our safety and our risk mitigation in that sport, and that was implemented this year, correct?
Yep. Preston? Yeah, this year we started looking at this year, but starting January, first event, we implemented it, and the feedback from competitors has been pretty universal we hope it's here to stay, and from our perspective it is. So, and yeah, to Kevin's point, that system actually showed it just this last weekend. We were in Oregon and Washington with a race, and had a car that had rolled several times and was actually blocking the road around a blind corner. And because of that car-to-car communication, the car that was approaching that crash knew about it about 500 meters before they got to that corner. So they were able to slow down and actually come to a stop. And of course, fortunately, everyone was unharmed. But the worst possible scenario in that is you come around the corner and T-bone that car that's already crashed. And with this system, it shouldn't happen, but at least there's the opportunity to inform other competitors as they're approaching something like that.
Real quick, gentlemen, I don't want to shortcut you. We know we're getting kind of close on time, but Jeff, I got a question for you there, and I'm going to throw it up to Kevin to begin with. What is the driving SRO growth? Is it looking to expand into new regions and markets?
What is driving SRO's growth?
Yes.
Okay. Well, SRO is a sanctioned series to us, but SRO, Stefan Riddell over in Europe, who owns the whole franchise worldwide, they are showing significant growth. SRO in the United States has they've had many races. They've exceeded 100 cars. They had 41 cars at their 8-hour race at Indy here. It's a very well-run program, an incredible organization worldwide, and they've got a compelling schedule, a great value proposition for drivers, and road racing right now. It's doing very well. It's a healthy environment. So SRO, just under the leadership of Greg Gill in the U.S., I much respect Greg and the organization that he brings, but they run a very professional organization and put on great events. And that's really, it's not a secret. That's what the growth is about.
Well, at the same time, I want to reiterate, what we started with here originally. USAC has been around a long time, has definitely got a record to show how they handle and manage things around the country and around everything that they're involved with, from snowmobile racing to rally racing. I mean, you guys have been a mainstay, and now you're still continuing to be an organization that has a banner of saying, look, we know how to protect our own, help protect yourself. We'll help you with organizing and getting in the right programs as far as insurance coverage, but also making sure you're not getting ready to step off into doing something. When we say that, we talk about the watchdog part of it. We can help you make sure you have an organization that's safe, can keep your competitors as well as your spectators safe. Kevin, you guys are just doing an outstanding job. I just want you to know that.
Thanks, Jeff. We appreciate the time today.
Well, everybody's been watching. We want to thank you for being with us today. And the thing is, as we move forward toward the end of the season, as far as Epartrade is concerned, we got the industry week coming up here in just 2.5 weeks. All the great companies that have been a part of it. I just want to say thank you, ARP, for also being a part of the webinars that we've been hosting each and every Wednesday. And hopefully, Francis and Judy will be back here in a moment, and we'll put wraps on this. But again, thank you to everybody with USAC for spending time with us, Kevin, Laura, Preston, and Todd. It's been a pleasure to speak with you. And again, USAC has been that mainstay in motorsports for many, many years. It looks like they're going to be around for many years to come. Continued success with what you have brought. And I look forward to hopefully crossing paths somewhere in the near future at a racetrack or an event.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you,
That's
Jeff.
warm.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And as we said when we started, Kevin, you have done such a brilliant job in the last 15 years, to grow USAC to where it is today. And so congratulations. And, not everyone wants to hear about, insurance and accident and dealing with that, but that's our series is for the business. It's for the industry. And that's really important because there's a lot of questions being asked. This is not, a platform or series we produce for race fans. This is really for the people within the business to learn and educate. And so thank you so much for doing that today with us. So Preston, we're going to see you in a couple of weeks. You're going to represent USAC during Race Industry Week. We are waiting the final confirmation with the WRC, but we're going to be basically putting you back to back with them. And that's going to be a really, really fascinating week. So again, thank you very, very much for watching us today. The webinar has been recorded. It will be posted on the Epartrade platform later today and then our YouTube channel. We're going to take a little break with the series until mid-January to get ready for Race Industry Week. In the meantime, you can watch the past 130 some episodes that are on the Epartrade platform and learn as much as you can about the industry. So thank you very, very much. And we'll see you at 6 a.m. Pacific on November 29th with Mr. Jeff Hammond and everybody on, correct?
Sounds good.
Very good.
Again.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Registering on Epartrade is easy. Fill out your name, email, phone number, and create a secure password. Next, select your business type. Choose supplier if you're looking to display products or services and connect with buyers. Choose racing business if you're looking to find new parts and connect with suppliers. Choose race team if you own or are a member of a professional racing team. Begin typing your company name. We most likely already have your company in our database, which you can select from the drop-down. Then, enter your job title. Choose Claim Company if you'll be editing your company profile. Other members of your company can choose Join Company if they'd like to use Epartrade as well. You can view and agree to our terms of use here. If you'd like to receive our weekly newsletter, choose Accept. Click Register Now, and your registration will be submitted for approval. You'll need to confirm your email once it goes through. To keep our platform industry only, you'll be approved shortly after. If we require additional proof of business, we'll reach out. Welcome to Epartrade.